The alarm bells rang through the Corvani monitoring station like the screams of dying metal. Commander Deho rushed to his control panel, his forearms moving quickly across the glowing buttons. The readings made no sense. Something massive had just appeared in empty space, but the sensors showed no jump signature, no energy trail, nothing that should happen when a ship arrived from faster-than-light travel. "Scan it again," Deho ordered his crew. The young Corvani officer at the sensor station, his purple skin pale with worry, ran the scan 3 more times. Each time, the result was the same. A ship sat in the void where nothing had been moments before. It was huge, maybe 5 times larger than the biggest Corvani battleship. The ship looked wrong. Most vessels in the galaxy followed similar designs. Smooth curves, bright colors, energy fields that glowed like small suns. This thing was different. It was dark gray, almost black, with sharp edges that seemed to cut through space itself. No lights decorated its hull. No energy fields danced around it. It simply existed, silent and waiting. "Sir, I'm getting no response to our communication attempts," reported the communications officer. "The ship isn't answering any of our signals." Deho stared at the image on his main screen. In his 20 years of service to the Corvani Empire, he had never seen anything like this. The Empire controlled this entire sector of space. Every ship that entered their territory had to announce itself and follow proper procedures. This vessel had done neither. "Send a priority message to Fleet Command," Deho said. "Tell them we have an unknown contact of significant size. Request immediate backup." Inside the mysterious ship, Captain Jiwoo stood on the command bridge with her hands behind her back. She was a small woman by human standards, but her presence filled the room. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and her uniform was plain black with no decorations. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. "Report," Jiwoo said in a calm voice. "The aliens have detected us, Captain," said Taemin from the navigation station. He was young for his position, but his knowledge of galactic politics was better than most diplomats. "They're trying to communicate and have called for help." "Good," Jiwoo replied. "How long until their reinforcements arrive?" "About 6 hours for the nearest patrol. 12 hours for anything significant," answered Bo-Ram from the weapons station. She was checking her systems, making sure everything was ready. The weapons on this ship could destroy planets, but Bo-Ram treated them like simple tools. Jiwoo nodded. She had studied the Corvani Empire for years. They were predictable, following the same patterns they had used to conquer 47 different species. First, they would try to talk. When that failed, they would attack in large numbers, using their superior technology to crush any resistance. It had worked every time before, but they had never faced humans. The Corvani monitoring station received its reply from Fleet Command faster than expected. Admiral Hyunsik himself answered the call, his image appearing on Deho's main screen. The Admiral was typical of his species. Tall, with purple skin and 4 arms that marked him as nobility. His uniform was covered with medals from successful conquests. "Commander Deho," the Admiral said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Explain this unknown contact." Deho sent all his sensor data to the Admiral's ship. He watched as Hyunsik's expression changed from boredom to interest, then to something that might have been concern. "This ship design doesn't match anything in our databases," Hyunsik said after reviewing the information. "Where did it come from?" "Unknown, sir. It appeared without any jump signature. Our sensors detected no approach vector." The Admiral was quiet for a moment. The Corvani Empire had technology that could detect ships coming out of faster-than-light travel from very far away. Nothing should be able to appear without warning. "Have you tried standard first contact procedures?" Hyunsik asked. "Yes, sir." "No response to any communication attempts." "Very well. I'm bringing the Third Fleet to your position. We'll handle this personally." The communication ended, leaving Deho staring at the empty screen. He looked back at the mysterious ship floating in space. Something about it made him nervous. though he couldn't explain why. It wasn't moving or doing anything threatening. It just sat there, waiting. On the human ship, Ji-woo received reports from all her department heads. Everything was working perfectly. The ship's advanced systems were running at peak efficiency, and the crew was ready for whatever came next. "Captain," said Soo-jin from the communications station, "we're picking up increased chatter from the alien fleet. They're moving ships from 3 different systems to this location." "How many ships?" Ji-woo asked. "Approximately 200 vessels of various sizes. The largest appear to be their standard battleships." Ji-woo almost smiled. 200 ships seemed like a lot to most people, but she had read the reports. The Corvani Empire typically used overwhelming numbers to win their battles. They would surround an enemy and attack from all sides, using their superior technology to destroy resistance quickly. "Any signs they know what we are?" Ji-woo asked. "No, Captain," Taemin replied. "Their communications suggest they think we're just another unknown species they haven't encountered yet." This was exactly what Ji-woo had expected. The Corvani Empire was confident in their power. They had defeated every enemy they had ever faced. In their experience, unknown ships meant new species to conquer and new worlds to add to their empire. They had no idea that humans had been watching them for decades. Earth's long-range scouts had observed every battle, studied every tactic, learned every weakness. The Corvani thought they were the strongest military force in this part of the galaxy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Time until the enemy fleet arrives?" Ji-woo asked. 5 hours, 37 minutes, Bo-ram answered. "Excellent. That gives us time to prepare." Ji-woo turned to address her entire crew. "All stations prepare for combat operations. This is what we trained for. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species these aliens have enslaved." The crew acknowledged her orders and began their final preparations. The ship that had appeared without warning was about to show the Corvani Empire what real power looked like. The galaxy was about to change forever, and it would all begin in the next few hours. Ji-woo stood quietly on her bridge, watching the stars through the main view screen. Soon, those stars would witness something that had never happened before in this part of space. The Corvani Empire was about to face an enemy they couldn't understand and couldn't defeat. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Hyun-sik stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Victory, watching the battle formation take shape around him. 200 Corvani warships moved into perfect attack positions, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon arrays. This was the Third Fleet, the pride of the Empire, and they had never lost a battle. "Admiral, all ships report ready for combat," announced his aide, a young officer named Woo Jin. The boy's voice carried excitement rather than fear. Like most Corvani, he had grown up hearing stories of the Empire's great victories. "Excellent," Hyun-sik replied, his 4 arms crossed behind his back. "Signal the unknown vessel, 1 final. Time, give them a chance to surrender before we destroy them." Lieutenant Yeonju worked at the tactical station, studying the enemy ship through their most powerful sensors. Something bothered her about the readings, but she couldn't identify what. The ship's energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. It seemed to absorb scanner beams rather than reflect them. "Sir," Yeonju said carefully, "I'm getting unusual readings from the target. Their ship design doesn't match any known technology." "Irrelevant," Hyun-sik waved one hand dismissively. "We have 200 ships against 1. Even if they have advanced weapons, numbers will win this battle." The communication attempt received no response from the human ship. Admiral Hyun-sik had expected this. Most primitive species tried to fight rather than accept the obvious truth that resistance was useless. "All ships, begin the attack," Hyun-sik ordered. The Corvani fleet opened fire with their standard tactics. Energy beams lanced through space from dozens of ships, creating a light show that could be seen from several star systems away. These weapons had destroyed the fleets of 47 different species. They had melted through the strongest shields, the thickest armor, the most advanced defenses known to galactic civilization. The beams struck the human ship and simply disappeared. "What happened?" Hyun-sik demanded, staring at his tactical display. "Did we miss?" "No, sir," Yeonju replied, her voice filled with confusion. "All weapons hit the target directly. But there's no damage, no energy discharge, nothing. It's like the ship absorbed our entire attack." On the human warship, Captain Ji-woo watched the light show with calm interest. The alien weapons were powerful, by galactic standards, but human shield technology was centuries ahead of anything else in this part of space. "Damage report," she said calmly. "No damage, Captain," reported In-ho from the engineering station. "Shields absorbed the entire attack, without dropping below 98%. Their weapons can't even scratch our paint." Soo-jin looked up from her communications station. "Captain, I'm monitoring their transmissions. They seem very confused about why their weapons didn't work." "Let them fire a few more times," Ji-woo said. "I want them to understand exactly how outmatched they are before we respond." The Corvani fleet fired again, then again. Each time, their most powerful weapons struck the human ship and accomplished nothing. Admiral Hyun-sik's confidence began to crack as he watched his fleet's attacks prove completely useless. "How is this possible?" he asked Yeonju. "Our weapons can destroy planets. How can one ship resist our entire fleet?" "I don't know, sir," Yeonju replied. She was studying every piece of data their sensors could gather. "Their shield technology is beyond anything I've ever seen. It's like they're using completely different laws of physics." Woo Jin approached the admiral nervously. "Sir, should we try boarding actions? Perhaps we can disable them from inside their ship." Hyun-sik nodded. "Launch all fighter squadrons. If we can't break their shields, we'll get inside and take the ship by force." Hundreds of small Corvani fighters launched from the larger ships, swarming toward the human vessel like angry insects. Their plan was simple. Get close enough to attach boarding pods and send soldiers inside the enemy ship. On the human bridge, Bo-Ram watched the approaching fighters with professional interest. "Captain, they're launching boarding craft. Should I activate point defense?" "Not yet," Ji-woo replied. "Let them get closer. I want their entire fleet to see what happens next." The Corvani fighters reached the human ship and began attaching their boarding pods to the hull. For a moment, it seemed like their plan might work. Then the human ship's point defense systems activated. The result was devastating. Tiny energy. Beams, each no bigger than a pencil, reached out from the human ship and touched each fighter craft. The advanced Corvani fighters simply exploded one after another in perfect sequence. In less than 30 seconds, all 300 fighter craft were destroyed. "By the gods," Woo Jin whispered, staring at the tactical display. "They destroyed our entire fighter wing without even trying." Admiral Hyun-sik felt something he had never experienced before in battle. Fear. His fleet's weapons couldn't damage. This ship. Their fighters had been destroyed in seconds. What kind of enemy were they facing? "Sir," Yeonju said quietly, "I recommend we withdraw and request reinforcements. This ship is using technology far beyond our understanding." "Never," Hyun-sik snarled. "We are the Corvani Empire. We do not retreat from a single ship, no matter how advanced." Captain Ji-woo had seen enough. The aliens had tried their weapons and their fighters. Now it was time to show them what human technology could really do. "Bo-Ram," she said simply. "Return fire." "Yes, Captain," Bo-Ram replied. Her fingers moved across her weapons controls with practiced ease. "Targeting enemy flagship first." The human ship fired a single weapon. It wasn't flashy like the Corvani energy beams. It was just a thin line of light that reached across space and touched the Crimson Victory. Admiral Hyun-sik's flagship exploded. Not gradually, not piece by piece, but instantly and completely. One moment it was there, the next moment it was expanding gas and debris. The most powerful ship in the Corvani Third Fleet had been destroyed by one shot from a weapon that seemed almost casual in its use. Impossible. Yeonju whispered from her escape pod. She had been thrown clear when the flagship exploded and was now floating helplessly in space, watching as the human ship turned toward the rest of the fleet. The human weapons fired again and again. Each shot destroyed a Corvani warship instantly. There was no struggle, no battle damage, no chance to fight back. The advanced alien vessels simply ceased to exist when the human beams touched them. In less than 1 hour, 200 Corvani warships had been reduced to 12 survivors. The greatest fleet in the Empire's history had been destroyed by a single human vessel that barely seemed to be trying. Captain Jiwoo watched the surviving ships flee toward their home systems. She could have destroyed them easily, but she let them go. They needed to carry the message back to their empire. They needed to tell their leaders what they had witnessed. "Shall I pursue, Captain?" Boram asked. "No," Jiwoo replied. "Let them run. Fear is a weapon too. And today we've given them plenty to fear." The first battle was over. The Corvani Empire had learned that their weapons were useless against human technology. Soon, they would learn that this was only the beginning of their problems. The hunt had begun. Emperor Junho received the news in his throne room on the capital world of Corvani Prime. The massive chamber, built to show the power and glory of the Empire, suddenly felt small and fragile. Lieutenant Yeonju stood before him, still wearing her damaged uniform from the escape pod, delivering the impossible report. 200 ships, the Emperor repeated slowly. "You're telling me that one unknown vessel destroyed 200 of our finest warships?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Yeonju replied. Her voice shook as she remembered watching her comrades die. "Their weapons cut through our shields like they weren't there. Our most powerful attacks couldn't even damage their ship." The Emperor's 4 arms gripped the sides of his throne. The Corvani Empire had ruled this sector of space for 300 years. They had conquered every species they encountered. The idea that one ship could destroy an entire fleet was beyond his understanding. "Where is this ship now?" he demanded. "Unknown, Your Majesty. After they let the survivors escape, the vessel simply vanished. No jump signature, no energy trail. One moment it was there, the next it was gone." Intelligence Chief Dong Wu stepped forward from his position near the throne. He was older than most Corvani in the royal court, his purple skin marked with the scars of many battles. "Your Majesty, I request permission to investigate this threat. We need to understand what we're facing." "Granted," Emperor Junho said. "Immediately. Use every resource available, find out where this ship came from and how many more there might be." 3 star systems away, the human warship materialized near a Corvani supply station. The station was small, only 50 workers and a few guard ships, but it supplied fuel and materials to 12 different military bases. Captain Jiwoo studied the target through the main view screen. "Hey, Wan, what can you tell me about this facility?" she asked her science officer. Heywan, a quiet woman who preferred studying data to fighting battles, consulted her analysis. "Standard Empire design, Captain. They use enslaved workers from 6 different species. The station processes raw materials taken from conquered worlds." "Any civilians?" Jiwoo asked. "Only the slaves, Captain. The Corvani staff are all military personnel." Jiwoo nodded. The human mission was clear. Destroy the Empire's ability to wage war while protecting innocent lives. Target their ships and industrial facilities. Avoid the worker quarters. The station's commander, a low-ranking officer named Min Seok, saw the human ship appear on his sensors and immediately panicked. He had heard rumors about the Third Fleet's destruction, but those rumors seemed impossible. Now, faced with the same dark ship that had caused the disaster, he knew the stories were true. "Send a distress signal," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell Fleet Command we need immediate assistance." "Sir, the nearest fleet is 6 hours away," his aide replied nervously. "Then we'll have to hold out until they arrive," Min Seok said. Though he didn't believe his own words, the human ship's weapons fired with surgical precision. The station's guard ships exploded instantly, just as the Third Fleet had. Industrial platforms that processed stolen resources burst into flames. Fuel storage tanks erupted in brilliant explosions that lit up the surrounding space, but the worker quarters remained untouched. The enslaved aliens who had been forced to labor for the Empire watched in amazement as their captors' ships burned while their own living areas stayed completely safe. Some of them had never seen their master's technology fail before. In less than 10 minutes, the supply station was crippled, its military force was destroyed, its industrial capability eliminated, but every enslaved worker was alive and unharmed. The human ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind burning wreckage and confused survivors. General Kyung-ho stood in the Imperial War Room, staring at a galactic map covered with red marks. Each mark represented an attack by the mysterious ship. In just 3 days, the vessel had struck 18 different targets across 12 star systems. "How is this possible?" he asked the room full of military advisors. "One ship cannot be in this many places at once." "Perhaps there are multiple ships," suggested one admiral. "No," Dongwu said firmly. He had been studying every piece of data they could gather. "The energy signatures are identical. It's the same vessel. Somehow they can travel instantly between star systems without using known faster-than-light technology." Emperor Junho entered the war room, his face dark with anger and worry. "Show me the damage," he commanded. Kyung-ho activated the holographic display. 3 shipyards destroyed, 12 supply stations eliminated, 5 training facilities burned, 6 patrol fleets wiped out completely. They're targeting our military infrastructure with perfect accuracy. "Casualties?" the Emperor asked. "Among our forces, over 10,000 dead. But here's the strange part. They're not killing civilians or slaves. Every attack has been precisely targeted to destroy military capability while protecting non-combatants." Dongwu looked up from his datapad. "Your Majesty, I've found something disturbing. The attacks follow a pattern that suggests detailed knowledge of our military structure. They know exactly which facilities are most important to our operations." "Spies?" the Emperor asked. "Possibly. Or this species has been observing us for a very long time." On the human warship, Captain Jiwoo reviewed the mission progress with her senior staff. The bridge crew worked quietly around them, monitoring. "Communications from across the Empire. The aliens are getting desperate," reported Su Jin from communications. "I'm detecting increased chatter about forming alliances with other species to fight us." "Any luck finding allies?" Jiwoo asked. "No, Captain. Most species remember how the Corvani conquered them. They're not eager to help their former oppressors." Tae Min looked up from his navigation console. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission on human frequencies. It's from Earth Command." Jiwoo nodded. "Put it through to my ready room. Boram, you have the bridge." In her private chamber, Jiwoo activated the communication system. The image of Admiral Gunwoo appeared, transmitted across hundreds of light years through quantum communication technology the galaxy had never seen. "Captain," Gunwoo said without preamble, "how goes the operation?" "According to plan, Admiral. The Empire's military capability has been reduced by approximately 30%. Their morale is completely broken." "Excellent. Are you ready for the next phase?" "Yes, sir. We can begin targeting their core worlds whenever you give the order." "Not yet," Gunwoo replied. "Let them sweat a little longer. Fear is making them desperate, and desperate enemies make mistakes. Continue hunting their fleets and installations. When they're completely helpless, we'll reveal ourselves properly." The communication ended, leaving Jiwoo alone with her thoughts. The Corvani Empire still thought they were fighting one mysterious ship with unknown origins. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this confrontation for over a century. They didn't know that Earth controlled a dozen star systems and commanded technology that made their most advanced weapons look like stone tools. Soon they would learn the truth. But first, they needed to understand exactly how helpless they really were. Back in the throne room, Emperor Junho made a decision that would haunt him forever. "Contact every species in our territory," he ordered Dongwu. "Offer them anything they want if they'll help us fight this enemy." "Your Majesty," Dongwu said carefully, "most of those species hate us. They may see this as an opportunity for revenge rather than alliance." "Then we'll make them help," the Emperor snarled. "Increase security on all slave worlds. Double the guard forces. If our subjects won't help willingly, we'll force them." It was exactly the mistake Captain Jiwoo had been waiting for. The Empire's cruelty was about to give humanity the perfect excuse to escalate their intervention. The hunt was about to become something much more serious. Intelligence Chief Dongwu worked through the night in his private archive, deep beneath the Imperial Palace. The ancient databanks contained records going back thousands of years, including information about species the Empire had encountered long before they became conquerors. He was looking for anything that might explain the mysterious ship and its impossible capabilities. Most of the old files were routine contact reports and trade agreements. But buried in the records from 80 years ago, Dongwu found something that made his blood freeze. A small notation about a survey ship that had detected unusual energy signatures near a yellow star in an unexplored region of space. The energy patterns matched perfectly with the readings from the human warship. "Computer, show me all records related to system designation XK447, he commanded. The holographic display filled with dozens of files, survey reports, long-range sensor data, even some blurry images of strange objects moving through space near the third planet of that yellow star. The planet was covered in blue oceans and white clouds, with large land masses that showed signs of industrial development. "Show me the most recent observations of this system," Dongwu said, his voice tense, with growing understanding. "Most recent observation was 73 years ago," the computer replied. "Survey mission was terminated due to detection of advanced defensive systems. Long-range scans indicated the presence of artificial structures throughout the system." Dongwu studied the data with growing horror. The energy signatures, the advanced technology, the surgical precision of the attacks, it all made sense now. The Empire hadn't encountered some random advanced species. They had found something that had been watching them for decades. "Computer, search for any records of contact attempts with the inhabitants of XK447. No contact attempts recorded. System was classified as potentially hostile and marked for future investigation when military resources became available." Dongwu realized the terrible truth. The Empire had discovered this species almost a century ago, noted their advanced technology, and then ignored them while conquering everyone else in the region. Now those same beings had decided to act, and they had been preparing for this moment for generations. On the human warship, Captain Jiwoo received reports from across the galaxy. The Empire's response to their attacks was becoming increasingly desperate and violent. On 12 different worlds, Corvani forces had increased security and begun executing slaves who showed any signs of hope or rebellion. "Captain," said Mi Young, the cultural specialist who studied alien psychology, "the Empire is making exactly the mistakes we predicted. They're increasing oppression instead of seeking peace." "Good," Jiwoo replied coldly. "Every act of cruelty gives us more justification for what comes next. How are the liberation efforts proceeding?" Young-soo, the Marine commander, looked up from his tactical planning station. "We've made contact with resistance groups on 37 worlds. They're ready to act when we give the signal." Captain Jiwoo had spent years studying the Corvani Empire's methods. They ruled through fear and overwhelming force, but that same brutality had created enemies on every world they controlled. Millions of enslaved beings were waiting for a chance to strike back at their oppressors. "Prepare the next phase," Jiwoo ordered. "Target their communication networks and government facilities. It's time to show them what real power looks like." Emperor. Junho stood in his throne room, listening as diplomat Seong-ho delivered his latest failure. The old Corvani had been trying to form alliances with neighboring species for 2 weeks, but every attempt had been rejected. "They all say the same thing, Your Majesty," Seong-ho reported sadly. "They remember how we conquered them. They want to see the empire fall, not help it survive." "What about the offer of independence?" the emperor demanded. "We promised to free the Zalani system if they would provide ships." They laughed. "Your Majesty, the Zalani leader said they would rather wait for our mysterious enemy to free them properly." The emperor's rage filled the throne room like a physical force. His 4 arms shook with fury as he realized that his empire's history of conquest had made alliance impossible. Every species he might have called for help had reasons to hate the Corvani. General Kyung-ho entered the room carrying an urgent message pad. "Your Majesty, we've lost contact with the Outer Ring communication network. 17 relay stations have gone silent in the past hour." "Attack?" the Emperor asked. "Unknown. The stations simply stopped transmitting. No distress signals, no signs of battle. They're just gone." What the Corvani didn't know was that human infiltration teams had been deployed across their territory. These small groups of specialists moved invisibly through space, using technology that made them undetectable to Empire sensors. They had been placing devices on key installations for weeks, waiting for the signal to act. Scientist Hyejin worked frantically in her laboratory, trying to understand fragments of human technology recovered from a battle site. The metal was unlike anything in known science, and the energy cells contained power sources that seemed to violate basic physics. "It's impossible," she muttered to herself, running the same tests for the 100th time. "This material should not be able to exist. The atomic structure makes no sense according to our understanding of matter." Her assistant, a young researcher named Jin Woo, looked over her shoulder at the results. "Perhaps our understanding is incomplete," he suggested carefully. "Or perhaps we're dealing with a species that has mastered sciences we haven't even discovered yet," Hyejin replied grimly. In his archive, Dongwu had made another disturbing discovery. The energy signatures from the human ship weren't just advanced. They were getting stronger. Each attack showed slightly more power than the last, as if the vessel was slowly revealing its true capabilities. Computer, analyze power output progression. From all recorded attacks, the display showed a steady increase in demonstrated capability. If this trend continues, the computer calculated, the vessel's actual power level may be hundreds of times greater than initially observed. Dongwu felt his world crumbling around him. The Empire had always won through superior technology and overwhelming force. But they were facing an enemy that made their most advanced weapons look like primitive tools. Computer, prepare a priority report for the Emperor. Classification, ultimate emergency. Meanwhile, in deep space, a second ship materialized near the edge of the Corvani home system. This vessel was even larger than the first, its dark hull bristling with weapon systems that could reduce planets to ash. The Hammer of Sol had arrived, and its presence sent waves of terror through every sensor station that detected it. Captain Jiwoo received the confirmation she had been waiting for. "All units report ready, Captain. Liberation forces are in position on 43 worlds. Communication networks are compromised. Government facilities are targeted." "Excellent," Jiwoo replied. "Signal the Hammer of Sol. Tell Admiral Gunwoo that we're ready to begin the final phase." On Corvani Prime, Emperor Junho received Dongwu's report and felt his empire crumble around him. The truth was worse than his worst nightmares. They weren't fighting some unknown species that had stumbled into their territory. They were facing beings who had been watching them for generations, studying their weaknesses, and preparing for this exact moment. "How long have they been planning this?" he asked Dongwu. "Possibly since before we became an empire, Your Majesty. Every conquest we made, every species we enslaved, they were watching and learning. They know everything about us, but we know nothing about them. The Emperor looked out through the great windows of his throne room at the capital city below. Millions of Corvani lived and worked there, unaware that their entire civilization was about to change forever. Soon, they would learn that the Empire's age of conquest was over. The time for hiding was finished. Humanity was ready to reveal itself to the galaxy. The sky above Corvani Prime filled with impossible shapes as the human fleet arrived. Dozens of dark ships materialized in perfect formation, each one larger and more threatening than the mysterious vessel that had started this war. The Vengeance of Terra looked small next to the massive dreadnoughts that now surrounded the Empire's capital world. Emperor Junho stood at the great window of his throne room, watching his world's defenses try desperately to respond to the invasion. Orbital defense platforms powered up their weapons, but the energy beams simply disappeared when they struck the human ships. Fighter squadrons launched from military bases across the planet, only to be destroyed by invisible weapons that killed them before they could even see their targets. "Your Majesty," General Kyung-ho said quietly, "Admiral Gunwoo of the human fleet is requesting to speak with you." The Emperor had never heard that name before, but he knew what it meant. The beings who had destroyed his empire were finally ready to reveal themselves. "Put him through," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. The holographic display activated, showing a human for the first time in Corvani history. Admiral Gunwoo was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations, but his presence filled the throne room with quiet authority. "Emperor Junho," Gunwoo said in perfect Corvani language. "I am Admiral Gunwoo of the Terran Defense Force. We need to talk." "Terran?" the Emperor asked. "Is that what you call yourselves?" "We are humans from the planet Terra, which you have catalogued as System XK4047. We have been watching your empire for 87 years, and we have decided that your reign of conquest must end." Dongwu stepped forward, his forearms shaking. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day your scouts first detected our home system," Gunwoo replied calmly. "We knew eventually your empire would expand far enough to threaten the species we have chosen to protect. We spent nearly a century preparing for this moment." The Emperor felt his legs grow weak. "What do you want?" "Your complete and unconditional surrender," Gunwoo said simply. "Your military forces will be disbanded. Your enslaved populations will be freed. Your government will operate under human oversight until we determine that you can be trusted to behave peacefully. And if we refuse," General Kyung-ho demanded. Gunwoo's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Captain Ji-woo has been very gentle with you so far. She has used minimal force and avoided civilian casualties. If you refuse our terms, we will demonstrate what human military power actually looks like when we stop holding back." On 43, worlds across the Empire, liberation began simultaneously. Human marine teams working with local resistance fighters struck at government facilities and military bases. The Corvani forces, already demoralized by weeks of impossible defeats, offered little resistance. Chang Min, a former slave who had spent 15 years in Corvani mines, stood in the ruins of the processing facility where he had been forced to work. Around him, other freed slaves stared in amazement at the human soldiers who had broken their chains. "You're really going to free all of us?" Chang Min asked the human marine commander. "That's why we're here," Young Su replied through his translator device. "No being should be enslaved by another. Your suffering ends today." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as the human liberation forces moved with precise efficiency. Slave camps were opened, forced labor facilities were shut down, and millions of beings tasted freedom for the first time in generations. Back on Corvani Prime, Emperor Junho struggled to understand what was happening to his empire. Why? He asked Admiral Gunwoo. Why do you care what happens to other species? What do you gain from this? Gunwoo was quiet for a moment, as if considering how to explain something very simple to someone who couldn't understand it. Emperor, your species conquered others for resources and territory. You enslaved beings because you wanted their labor. You destroyed civilizations because they stood in your way. To you, other species are tools to be used. And to you? The Emperor asked. To us, they are people. Different from humans, yes, but people nonetheless. They have the right to live free, to choose their own paths, to exist without fear. When you enslaved them, you made their freedom our responsibility. The concept was so alien to Corvani, thinking that the Emperor struggled to process it. You're willing to fight a war for beings who aren't even your own species? We already fought it, Gunwoo replied. And we won. So Young, the human diplomat, materialized in the throne room using personal teleportation technology that made the Corvani gasp in surprise. She carried a data pad containing the terms of surrender. Emperor, she said formally, these are the conditions for peace. You have 1 hour to accept them, or Admiral Gunwoo will demonstrate the full capabilities of our fleet. The Emperor took the data pad with trembling hands. The terms were exactly what Gunwoo had outlined: complete disarmament, liberation of all slaves, and human oversight of Corvani government. But as he read further, he realized the humans were offering something unexpected. Rehabilitation programs, he asked. Educational exchanges, economic assistance. We don't want to destroy your people, So Young explained. We want to help you. Become better than you were. Your species has great potential, but you've spent centuries learning the wrong lessons about power and conquest. Song Min, a young Corvani officer who had survived the Third Fleet's destruction, stepped forward. Your Majesty, perhaps we should listen to them. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their military defeated our entire empire with a single ship. Maybe they can teach us things we never imagined. Emperor Junho looked around his throne room at the faces of his advisors. Some showed anger and defiance, but most showed resignation and even hope. The empire was finished, but perhaps something better could take its place. I accept your terms, he said quietly. The formal surrender ceremony took place 3 days later in the Imperial Plaza. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched as Emperor Junho signed the documents that ended the Corvani Empire's reign of conquest. Human ships hung in the sky above, no longer threatening but serving as a reminder of the new order. Captain Jiwoo stood with Admiral Gunwoo as they watched the ceremony. Do you think they'll adapt? She asked. Some will, Gunwoo replied. Others will resist, but their children will grow up in a galaxy where slavery and conquest are forbidden. That's what matters. Jae Hyun, the human historian assigned to document these events, recorded his final entry. Today marks the end of the Corvani Empire and the beginning of the Terran Mandate. For the first time in galactic history, a single species has taken responsibility for protecting all others. The age of conquest is over. The age of protection has begun. Years later, beings across the galaxy would remember this moment not as a conquest, but as a liberation. The humans had not come to rule, but to serve as guardians, ensuring that no species would ever again suffer under the boot of imperial ambition. The galaxy was finally free, and it was humanity that had made it so.